So the one data point I can provide that just really encapsulates all of that is that when we last spoke 2.5 years ago, the average approval rate was probably hanging around 11 or 12%. And today it's hanging around 20%. And the main difference there is that we've done a lot to improve the targeting and also the way that we convey the information on the website. So
hello and welcome to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lennons. I have my very first self-proclaimed repeat offender for this episode, the founder and CEO of SubmitHub, Jason Grishkoff. Now, we had him on the show a few years back, and we had an excellent conversation, and that conversation will be linked in the show notes below, as well as in the cards above. Jason and I talk about a number of things, including how SubmitHub has changed, because the last time he was on the show, we talked about SubmitHub pre-pandemic, and the pandemic happened and things shifted. So Jason talks about how the platform has shifted over the years. He talked about how he got into coding, which was also briefly discussed in the last episode. But we also talk about current state of the music industry's blogging platform or blogging sphere. And are they still relevant? Why are they still relevant? What weight do they carry? So we talk about those types of things and how they correlate to growing an artist's career. So before I let you go, I want to remind you that you can sign up to my email list, which is in the show notes below. If you're following on YouTube or watching this video on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a comment, and thumbs up. That really helps the show get discovered by new listeners. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all social medias, TikTok as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any podcasting platform, leave a 5-star rating and review. That really helps the show get discovered as well. And I really appreciate the feedback that I receive through those. If you are somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, I'm always looking for people in the music industry, specifically in music tech, attorneys, sync licensing. Please reach out via the forum below. I'm always looking for guests in those realms. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with the wonderful CEO of SubmitHub, Jason Grishkoff. Great. Thank you so much for joining back. I think you're actually the first guest on the show to come back.
All right.
So
I've
I've had
the 101st episode, huh?
Yeah, 101st episode. I haven't had a lot of time the past couple months to take care of and record many new episodes. I did record one a few weeks ago, but I haven't released it yet.
Congrats on 100, though. That's a lot.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment. I'm pretty proud of that. I never thought I would ever make 100 episodes. I thought it would be like 10 episodes and I would fizzle out and it would never happen again. But like you said before we were recording, 2.5 years since you were back on. So can you give a brief overview for the new listeners of who you are? And then in the last 2.5 years, give us what has changed with SubmitHub? What have you noticed with kind of the curator / independent artist relationship through SubmitHub?
Okay. All right. Okay. So for those of us who haven't listened to the previous episode, highly recommend it. Some fantastic questions on there. But
Highly recommend.
My name is Jason. I've been in the music blogging game since 2007. I started a music blog called IndieShuffle. I rode the wave of peak music blogging and got to enjoy some time as, sort of one of the top 100 music blogs in the world. That was pretty cool. Then things started to peter out a little bit, and I had to try find a different way to keep myself gainfully employed. So I set about trying to solve a problem that myself and many other bloggers had, which was that our inboxes were absolutely unusable. So I was getting in excess of 300 emails a day. They were untargeted. They were unformatted. It was next to impossible to go through. And so I took some of the coding skills I'd learned building IndieShuffle, and I decided I would start an entirely new project, which began as a very simple form with an artist name, a song title, and a link to your song, either SoundCloud or YouTube. And then I used my fancy code to turn that into a really consistent feed so that I, as a blogger, could just scroll through it. It looked still does look like a lot like your SoundCloud feed. And I could simply give a thumb up, which meant I like it, I'm going to blog it on IndieShuffle, or a thumb down, which meant, unfortunately, it's not good for us. And that naturally led people to follow up and wonder why they got a thumb down, to which I said, for $1, I'll tell you. And surprisingly, everyone said, okay, cool. So the idea really caught on. We managed to convince a lot of, I think in my first 3 or 4 months running the site, I emailed close to 1,000 music blogs. And I used the same techniques that most of those artists who were spamming were using. So I bought a spreadsheet full of emails and I sent off this email to everyone. And I think about 5% of them got back. But that was enough to really kick off the platform. So here we are, 7 years later. The birthday was on November 10th, November 9th? No, whatever. It was a week ago. So 7 years on, almost 30 million submissions, close to 3,000 curators, and more than 800,000 registered users. So the what started off as just a simple form has really taken off, and at this point, it's the market leader in the space, but it's also spawned numerous competitive knockoffs, which keep me busy every day. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, that's amazing. And as I was doing some research before our episode here, I noticed that SubmitHub turned 7. And I had joined the platform when it was 4, and it's just like crazy that was almost half the age of the platform, and it doesn't seem like I joined it that long ago. So you've got the platform going, you've got SubmitHub going. I want to go back a little bit just to IndieShuffle. I want to talk about IndieShuffle for a second.
Ooh, okay.
How did you build that? Was that just a minor tangent, nothing too crazy?
Yeah.
Did you custom build IndieShuffle, or was that a WordPress website? Was it a template? How did you get IndieShuffle going?
Yeah, so it started with a WordPress template. And then I remember one of the first things I tried to. So obviously, when you get a WordPress template, one of the first things you do is tweak the design and try to get it to look the way you want.
Of course.
But one of the first projects I really had to dig into was trying to get similar songs to show up in the sidebar. So if you visited song A, I would show you song B, C, and D in the sidebar. And so what was cool about WordPress is that there were tons of people making plugins for things like that, and they would be based on tags. So I installed one of these plugins, started tagging all of the blog posts that I had. I didn't have more than 100 at that point, so it wasn't too hard to go through them and tag them all. And it looked ugly. So I started to poke around in the WordPress plugin, because you can do that still in WordPress. You can go in and edit all these plugins. So you poke around, hit save, go, oh crap, I just broke everything. Go back, undo, I was copying from a notepad, right? So I put the working code into a notepad, then break it, and then go, oh crap, all right, put that back. So that was the infancy of me learning how to code. And then one of the turning points was that I had a friend who said, yeah, it's a cool blog, but it's kind of annoying because I'm trying to browse around, and every time I do, the song stops, and I have to go and find out where I was and maybe start the song again. And they said, can't you just make it so that you navigate around and the song keeps playing? And I thought, oh, no one does that. How do you, I've never seen a website do that before. And that just gives you an idea of how dated this whole thing was. So I found a guy on WordPress who had built a plugin that allows you to navigate around the website without it refreshing. And I said, cool, that's step one, but can you build me a little player that also works while you navigate around? And so he did. And that was sort of a turning point for IndieShuffle, because at that point, there was SoundCloud didn't exist, Spotify wasn't around, all these streaming services weren't there, and there was only one other website on the internet that allowed you to navigate while streaming, which was hypem.com, Hype Machine. So we suddenly were at parity with Hypem in a way, never in size or influence, but it turned IndieShuffle from the years 2009 until 2013. We were people's streaming service, and we even had an iPhone app and an Android app, and that's where people went. You didn't have Spotify, you didn't have Apple Music and all these things. So that was when IndieShuffle was boss, and that's where I learned a lot of my coding, was just hacking these things and hiring freelancers to help me.
Okay, that was one of the questions, is where did you learn to code? And then the second one was, was IndieShuffle monetized in any way? Was
Oh,
there
yeah.
any ads, or how did you monetize the platform?
Yeah, so we were right time, right place. There was a transition going on from print advertising to display advertising, and in print advertising, you paid based on circulation, and the numbers were usually pretty high. So if there was 1,000 people in circulation and you wanted to get a small 3x3 ad, you'd probably spend $200, $300, $500 on that. So you had a lot of these salespeople convincing folks that advertising on the internet was just as effective and had a similar value. And so we were able to charge, actually, they said it wasn't even similar value. They were charging way less. Instead of paying $200 for 1,000 views, you can pay $8. And so a lot of advertisers jumped at that. They thought it was a great rate. So on IndieShuffle, we were showing all these display banners and we were making $15,000 a month from advertising. It was crazy. And then I would reinvest that into, we had about 10 staff writers. I had a team in Bangladesh who was helping me code. So I had a full-time job on the side, and my whole approach was to just take all the money IndieShuffle was earning and reinvest it. So yeah, money was good. And that didn't last for very long because by the time 2013, 2014 rolled around, both Google and Facebook were effectively proving that display advertising was a terrible investment. No one willingly clicks on ads. And they had switched the model to not be based on eyeballs, but rather based on conversions. And they could do that because of the volumes they were dealing with. So why would you pay $8 for 1,000 views when you can pay 5 cents per click? And so what happened was that the revenue for blogging of any kind, knitting, food, music, etc., took this very rapid nosedive where we were getting $8 for 1,000 views. The next year it was $3 for 1,000 views. And today we're lucky if we're getting 20 or 30 cents for 1,000 views.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. And now did they back then, I think now they rank the quality, like obviously if Toyota is placing an ad on your website versus some Joe Schmo knitting shop, Toyota's paying a higher premium to have that spot than the knitting shop most likely is.
Yeah.
So they're paying based on the advertiser's ad spend as well, is correct?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm just not sure that display advertising is something that people are investing as much money in these days. You're more likely to invest
that's true.
in Facebook advertising. And on Google, it's a lot of conversions. So I haven't looked at their numbers, but I would imagine that the bulk of their advertising revenue is still just coming from search results. And it's almost laughable at this point when you search for something, the top 5 results are typically an ad. So yeah.
It's sad. You actually almost have to start going to the second page of Google to get the actual first page.
I've almost actually searched for
scroll down and it's like oh boy.
I don't know because there's probably people paying to advertise above me. I'm just gonna go check real quick. Pardon me, everyone. But yeah, people can pay to be above you. And so actually for a while I was doing Google ads and I put in, it doesn't look like anyone's doing it. All right.
I don't see anything on my end either.
Well, it'd be a waste of money.
Yeah.
We did Google ads for a while actually with SubmitHub. I just had them running in the background for when people search things like promote your music. And then I realized that Google had at one point automatically put on some keywords for me. They love doing this. They based on search results, we've recommended these, and their top word was SubmitHub. And actually all of my ad spend was going for the term SubmitHub, which I ranked them. Anyway, I fell out. I mean, these guys are crooks. Who would ever want to work for them?
Yeah.
A bunch of terrible people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So IndieShuffle comes to a close. I was going to say, I think you used to work for Google.
Those who don't know.
So
yeah.
For those who don't know, yeah. So from IndieShuffle to SubmitHub, and now 7 years later, which funny enough, my birthday is on November 2nd. SubmitHub is like the 9th or 10th. So like a week after my birthday.
My birthday is on October 29th. So we're actually closer than you are to SubmitHub. So.
Oh my goodness. Birthday. Wow. Yeah. So I have like virtually everybody in my friend circle is My brother and his friend just left yesterday. His was on the 8th. His friend was on the 6th. I have another friend who lives near me. His is on the 20th, so his is on Sunday. RuPaul's birthday is today. I mean, yours was a month ago. SubmitHub's like everybody is a November baby. So I
It's
wonder
good to be a
why this
Scorpio.
thing
That's
is.
it. We're Scorpios. Woo!
It's good to be a Scorpio. Scorpios unite. So going from IndieShuffle to SubmitHub, and now that you've turned 7, now that SubmitHub has turned 7, how have musicians and curators used the platform, and how are they using it today to pitch the music and whatnot?
Much the same way. The main difference, I suppose, is the amount of data that we have available on SubmitHub and the way that I've tried to leverage that to help artists make more informed decisions. So the one data point I can provide that just really encapsulates all of that is that when we last spoke 2.5 years ago, the average approval rate was probably hanging around 11 or 12%. And today it's hanging around 20%. And the main difference there is that we've done a lot to improve the targeting and also the way that we convey the information on the website. So since then, we've gone through at least one UI redesign, and I finally brought in an outside company to help me. My employees just kept being like, "Look, we know you like coding and you're good at that, but really, do you think you could maybe just bring in someone to help with UI?" And I'd always be like, "What do you mean? What are you saying? Mine's not good enough." And I did. I brought in a local company here in Cape Town, and they were great. So yeah, we've cleaned up a lot of stuff in terms of processing that information as an artist, and the main idea here is to try and shepherd people towards making better decisions about who they should send to, because it's a net positive on both sides, right? For artists, you're having more success, and for curators, you're getting more targeted songs. So that's probably the biggest on the curator side, the biggest change, because other than that, the core functionality of it is still exactly the same. You're sending your songs to curators. They have to check 3 boxes: respond in 48 hours, listen for at least 20 seconds, and write 10 words of feedback. And as long as they do that, boom, they get the credit. So yeah, the core system hasn't really changed, but we have added a lot of features on the side since our last conversation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because I used SubmitHub and I was spending a lot of time on it because I wanted to test it out and see if it was viable and what it was like, what was the hype about at the time. And I found myself as a curator, so I run a blog, and I was spending a lot of time writing about these individual songs that wouldn't really get the traffic that are needed. So, like, 2009, this would have been absolutely the match made in heaven, because you would have had songs handed to you on a golden platter to write about that would drive a lot of traffic that would then propel these artists. But now individual music releases, and even, I'm a staff writer at EDM.com as well, and we just shy away from single releases and album releases just because they just don't perform well in search results. Like, people just don't turn to blogs anymore to find new music. So how are other blogs and curators on SubmitHub doing kind of that same thing? How are they still accepting and publishing, or are they just using to add to their Spotify playlists or SoundCloud or whatever? What are they kind of doing?
So on the blogging side, we encourage folks to actually still write original content. We've got this thing called the Really Good Bloggers program that people join. And the idea there is that when you publish a blog post, it should be focused on a single, and you should actually be saying something original about it. I think the difference between most of the blogs on SubmitHub and something like EDM.com is that the bloggers on SubmitHub are your more traditional bloggers. They're doing it because they enjoy finding music and sharing it. And they actually don't know anything about monetization or traffic. And you saw this back in the day too. I remember there was a forum called Elbows, which is actually where I really got hooked on the whole thing. But Elbows was one of the first forums where all the music bloggers got together. And even Anthony from Hype Machine was there. It was the coolest place to be. And there was a split in the school of thought, because most of the people who ran music blogs had no clue how to code or make money, and they felt like that didn't have a place in music blogging. It jeopardized your integrity, and it wasn't the whole purpose. And then there was a group of people like, me at IndieShuffle and a whole bunch of other music blogs who sort of excelled and took this and hired developers and brought in advertising, figured out how to make money and built a business out of it. Most of those guys aren't around anymore because that business model isn't feasible. And what you see from the 300 or 400 blogs on SubmitHub is that they are less concerned with making money as a business and just more into the idea of having this as a hobby and a passion on the side. Some of them are musicians, some of them have pretty traditional day jobs, some of them are still at school. But I do think that there's still quite a lot of value in music blogs for independent artists. So in many ways, I suppose your question was more about the perspective from the bloggers and why they're doing it. But from an artist standpoint, there's still the added value of, the blog content is evergreen, which means it doesn't disappear. So it's not like a Spotify playlist where your song gets removed after 2 months, or an Instagram story, which is only 24 hours long. A blog review sticks around for as long as that blog is online. It's also much better content to share. And I mean, I agree with you. The amount of traffic that these artists can push back to a blog pales in comparison to what it used to be. But it's still, in terms of a valuable thing to get, I think a blog post is way cooler to share with your fan base than a Spotify playlist. So to me, there's still some value in blogs. It's not traffic. We don't make our decisions in terms of who gets to join SubmitHub based on their engagement and traffic. When a blog is applying to join SubmitHub, we are more concerned with the content that they're writing. We also want to see a demonstrated history of music blogging, as in they didn't just start last week to try and join SubmitHub. And we also want to see that they seem to be doing it because they're passionate about music, which differs quite strongly from the majority of the Spotify applications we get. So most of the Spotify playlisters we get, I think we reject about 80% of them. And I would say that the bulk of them have started a playlist because they want to make money, not because they love finding new music. So I still think bloggers are this cooler, old school bastion of actual curators. But that's not to say they're, the 20% of Spotify playlisters we do let on, we try to make sure that they are actually genuinely interested in music.
Of course. Yeah, and I would actually add to your point of there is definitely value to blogs because, like you said, they're evergreen and they're going to be online as long as the website is online. So if somebody writes a review about somebody, that's something you can use in your press release. That's something you can use to help tell your story. And then when people search for your name or they search for something specific, keywords, those will pop up with potentially more information in that article. It's a potentially, if you get a question a lot where you do a really in-depth interview with somebody talking about a very sensitive topic and people ask you this question, the same question all the time, you could say, hey, look, I don't want to talk about this right now. Here's my article. Or to learn more about me and the project, here's my article, and you can drive traffic that way. So it does work in a way of evergreen content, but I guess and those unique stories are very rare, and I love writing about those types of things. When I get a pitch with a really unique story or a brand or anything like that, those are the types of things I really love, rather than a SoundCloud link saying, hey, my song just dropped, I'm an artist from Canada, can you support me? Like, I don't know anything about you. So those are the ones that make it's harder. I get probably 9 of those. There's one really good one.
You've reminded me of an article I read a couple of weeks ago, and I forget who it was, but some lady who runs a label said that they are no longer in the business of selling music, they're selling stories. So I think with the oversaturation of music out there, most of it being actually pretty decent, it's like 95% of the music going through SubmitHub is not bad, which I think is one of the most difficult parts for artists. They come in thinking they've got a good song. They've hired someone to do a great mix and a great master. They paid a lot of money for that, and then they get rejected. And it's not because their song is bad. It's because everyone else's songs are good. And so now it's no longer about the song necessarily, but about the whole picture. And in a way, it's always been about that, right? So you think of some of the greatest artists of the last 50 years, and much of that is based on character, not just, step one, have amazing music, But step 2, have something else going on. Michael Jackson's popping into my mind. Queen is popping into my mind. Heck, Lady Gaga, for a more recent example, is there. And even,
Lil
I
Nas
mean,
X.
in a weird way, like Kanye West, right? The story and the entertainment is the drama that goes on around him. And so he is a complete media package. And I think I can see why running a bigger blog, those are the stories you're going to focus more on, because that's where the consumption is. And we are hitting a weird point where there's a complete oversaturation of music, and how do you differentiate yourself there? I don't have a good answer. You just got to be different.
Yeah, you got to be different, which is kind of an all-encompassing word. It can mean a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people,
and
but
naturally different too. You can't force it, right? Because people can read that.
It's so easy to sense those things online.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a very big challenge point for a lot of artists, is how do I be different? And they sit on it, and it festers and festers and festers, and they overthink it, and then it just sounds forced after so long.
It's also genre dependent, right? Lo-fi beats, for example, a lot of those guys don't need to be the story and the character, and those guys are making money from streaming. Different, right?
Yeah, because they get added to every Spotify, every lo-fi study playlist and sleep playlist.
Yep.
And people just listen to them on repeat all night.
Yep. SubmitHub's good for that.
Yeah, that's true. So I know when we were speaking last time, I think you were in the process of adding TikTok creators and other types of influencers. So how has that been? And what types of content creators does best on SubmitHub?
That has been quite a journey. That's how I'll put it. It was the wild, wild west when we were getting into it. So influencers many of the influencers we've run into have quite a sense of entitlement, self-worth, a very high self-worth, and tend to overvalue themselves. So when we first kicked this off, most of the influencers we were chatting to were asking for $500 or $1,000 to share a song, which is ludicrous. And we quickly learned that if we offered them $5, most of them would say, yeah, fine, okay, fine. And some of that was because we were able to get this constant flow going through. But from there, we then encountered the issue that they're not doing it because they're passionate about music. They're doing it because they can make some money. And in line with that, because many of them are quite young, they will do whatever they can to abuse the system or take advantage of it. So this ranged from sharing the wrong song to taking the song down within 5 seconds to just these guys were really creative. They tested my systems in so many ways. And some of them were successful in stealing, a couple $100 from us. Today, I think we've got it under wraps. So the way the system works on SubmitHub is a little bit different from the curator side. With curators, you're using credits as sort of a carrot to entice the curator to spend the time with your song. It doesn't influence whether it's going to get shared or not, and there's no additional money transaction for that. The money is for the time the curator spends logging in. On the influencer side, we experimented with that, but that wasn't working, and we ended up switching to a straight-up payola model. And it's like branded marketing, right? So you come up and you pay money, $20, $5, there's some as low as $1 for the content to be shared. And you can provide a prompt for them as well. You pay a little bit of extra if you want them to, wear all purple or do something at the drop or lip sync or dance or whatever. You can do that. And from the tech side, we've done a lot of work to ensure that they are sharing properly and not abusing the system. So things like verifying that they've added the right song, they've tagged the right people, the video is long enough, it's still online. There's a whole bunch of processes we have in the back end to try and verify and maintain and keep people behaving without us manually having to sit there and keep our finger on almost 2,000 influencers. So that's good. That's in the last couple months. That's feeling pretty safe. We're good. We're feeling groovy. The types of influencers we're working with are micro influencers. And we do find that it's far easier to sign up people from on the advertising side, you would call it tier 2 or tier 3 regions. So these are places where the dollar is really valuable. Think South America and the Middle East even, and Russia. Gosh, we had so many Russian influencers, but that's dropped off a little bit since the war. So we've been trying to balance that, and we've actually grown a lot in South America because now we have the South American labels coming in and using this in bulk. And so the way that people use the influencer submissions, I think there's two ways to gain value from it, and one thing you definitely shouldn't do. The one thing you should not do is try to use it as a way to go viral, because forcing yourself to go viral just doesn't work. It's such a hard thing to accomplish, and it's just generally not going to work out. So, I mean, you go viral when people start to make videos from your content without you having to ask them to do that or pay them to do that. And that's super duper duper difficult. So the way that, let's say, like Universal Music comes in and they want to run a campaign for one of their songs, the way they'll do it is they'll just pour a bunch of money into it to generate as many user content videos as they can, so that the feed on TikTok, when you open up the song, looks like it's saturated and it doesn't look like the song flopped. So they're just trying to, it's sort of a fake it till you make it type of thing, where they want to make it look like the song is buzzing and there's something about this artist. The other technique you can use with the influencer submissions is to think of it as a way to get people to generate content for you, almost like a mini music video. And then you can turn around and share that. So let's say you've got a theme going, or your song is about depression. There's an artist named Dax who just had a song about depression. And so the shares that he asked for were themed around that. And then he can go around and reshare that and sort of keep the trend going and whatnot. So those are the two ways that we think influencer submissions can be leveraged. It hasn't taken off as quickly as I anticipated. So I would say a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was a ton of buzz around TikTok being the new kingmaker of music. And some people thought maybe this was going to be the end of Spotify playlists in the same way that music blogs had sort of petered out. But I think what we've seen is that it's just another player in the space, or yet another player in the space. I'll put it that way. So blogs were so powerful because there weren't any other players, and blogs are still around, but now there's all these other ways to share your music: Instagram advertising, Spotify playlists, TikTok, all of these types of things. And so it hasn't replaced any of those. It's just joined the party in a sense. So about 30% of our submissions now are influencer submissions. And to be honest, that's maybe less. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I might have predicted a quicker ascent. And just anecdotally, from the buzz I've seen in the newsletters I subscribe to and whatnot, the whole TikTok being the kingmaker has become less the topic. And now all the articles I'm seeing are about the oversaturation of music and what do we do about that. So I think it's shifted a bit. For us, I'm done with the influencer side. Like, the product works. We're not going to invest too much more time in it.
Yeah. It sounds like a very difficult thing to kind of mediate. And like you said, a lot of these influencers are 15, 16-year-olds, and they just want to make money. They don't care how it's done. They just want to make money. They want it now. They want the instant gratification of being able to make $100 in 3 days.
Yeah.
And that is, you and I both know that's, who doesn't want to do that? We agree with you. And if you come up with a solution to do it, let us know. But it's not entirely feasible. We haven't got to the point where we can just flip a switch and make that happen. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before then, unfortunately. I want to take maybe 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes, and just kind of wrap this up, because I actually have another podcast right after you.
Number 103.
Yeah. No, you'll be first because you were recorded first. So I release them in the way that I recorded them. So you'll be 101. Always be 101. So What else? So are you noticing that music is the most common type of submission on there? Are you noticing, is that the only type of submission you guys take on SubmitHub nowadays?
So yeah, I mean that's an interesting question of what's next and what's the next product. So on the curator side,
Mhm.
I've got some cool ideas that I still want to put in place, but it works. On the influencer side, I'm done with it. It works. I'm tired. The thing we're working on now is that we're actually slowly rolling out the SubmitHub Marketplace, which is going to be a bit like Fiverr, but with quality control. So I think one of the
Mm.
things we do really well, and basically our full-time job on SubmitHub, so there's 5 of us full-time, but a lot of our time is spent, we call it policing, but essentially curating the curators and making sure that everyone's behaving and delivering something of value to artists and not taking advantage of the system. So we've gotten pretty good at that. And I think the community on SubmitHub is strong enough that we are positioned to roll out essentially a Fiverr that has a very music specific focus, but has that extra level of policing that SubmitHub's team has gotten really good at. So you'll be able to go on this
Mm.
marketplace to submit for EP reviews and album reviews, album artwork, Spotify canvases, lyric videos, EPKs, artist bios. Man, the list is it's a long list. But essentially, it's
Mm.
I don't want to say I'm rebuilding Fiverr because man, have they built a beast. I don't know if you've ever poked around there, but the idea is that
Mhm, I have.
releasing music today requires an artist to complete so many different micro, mini, tiny tasks. They have to become a jack of all trades.
Yes.
And so they have to learn how
Mhm.
to mix, how to master, how to finally release their song, how to upload it to a distributor, how to work on the marketing, how to do all of this stuff. And I've spoken to some people who run labels who part of their conversation with artists is that you should stop doing all of that and focus on making music and let us take care of it. So essentially, the idea here is that SubmitHub will be able to provide a marketplace where independent artists can come and hire people for small prices. Between the pricing we've got is going to be between $5 and $100. That's the range. So you'll be able to hire people for smaller prices to execute these mini tasks for you, and maybe ultimately, my future vision is you can just buy the complete package, and we'll just line you up with
Mm.
okay, cool. Step one, artwork. Which of these artworks do you like? Okay, cool. You like to work with this guy. Okay, step two, this. Who do you want to work with? This. And you can just create your own package, check out at the end, and boom, there's your complete thing done. So that's
Mm.
that's what I'm working on.
That's, really exciting, and this is only gonna be specific to, like, creators in music? So, graphic designers who
Yeah.
specialize in creating cover art, posters,
Yep.
band posters, things like that?
Yep.
Wow. So, are you having to curate more people to put that marketplace together? Because right now, graphic designers aren't on the platform.
Correct. So we're going to be sourcing primarily from the SubmitHub community. As I mentioned, most people
Okay,
today are a jack of all trades, and many musicians do have graphic design experience. But yeah, it's going to be the
sure.
first one where we are opening up well beyond curators. So again, there's going to be an application process that people are going to have to go through, and we're going to be monitoring everything closely. Like we're actually going to review every deliverable as well before it gets handed off to the client. So the idea is that the quality
Mm.
control will be there to make sure that people aren't getting ripped off, as occasionally happens on Fiverr, and it's going to be open to anyone who wants to apply. It's not specific to curators.
And are they gonna be able to submit, like, set their own rates and prices, or is that all set up by you guys?
No, no, you'll be able to. So it's up. It's up. It's in this like little private beta where we're slowly inviting people to apply to provide these services, and it's a bit of a launch and iterate on coding. So like step one was to come up with all the
Yeah.
categories and the way they work. Step two is to get all the applications working, and then step three will be. I'll start working on this next week is to actually display all of these listings, allow to filter them, request, deliver, chat. I've got it all. It's up here somewhere. Um, but yeah, the pricing, we're sort of setting the range of what's acceptable
Uh-huh.
within that tiny task that you're executing, and then you're going to slide from there where you feel comfortable. And then it goes into the marketplace, and it's up for people to decide whether that is worth it to them or not. So it is in a way a competitive. It's like Fiverr, right? So Fiverr is also self-pricing, and at the end of the day, if you price yourself too high, you are probably not going to get any work. I was going to say, in some ways, I feel like I've set some wrong expectations with the existing blogging community, because they were like, "Is this launching yet? Is it ready? Is it ready? Oh, next week. All right, it's going to be out next week." I'm like, "Whoa. This is probably a multi-month coding project, but I'm optimistic I'll get it before everyone taps out for Christmas. We'll see."
Yeah. Where do you learn your coding? Was this all self-taught?
Yeah, it's all self-taught. Yeah.
Wow. I find it very impressive that you're able to teach yourself coding. It's literally a different language, and then you're able to code this entire website and have it all function and all this stuff. I don't know how you do that. That's impressive.
I think one of the tricks to learning how to code is to have a project to work on that you're actually passionate about, and having that vision of what you want to be able to execute. So I don't think I've done anything exceptional. I've simply acquired the tools and the knowledge to build what I wanted to build. And a lot of the code that I write today, I've gotten better over the last 10 years, but a lot of what I'm doing is the same structure. It's all the same stuff still. It's like when you go to write a blog post, you're still going through the same thing. You've got the framework. There it is. And you know the steps. You got to get the artwork ready. You got to do this. Got to write. Okay, I'm going to write my story sort of flows this way. And you have that framework in your head. So a lot of the code that I'm writing today, while I'm getting more efficient and better at it, it's not like I'm learning brand new ways of writing the code. I found a way that works, and I just keep using that. And that allows me the framework I use allows me to very quickly roll out these new features. So it's not magic, but it is magic.
Yeah. That's something I want to learn one day, is sit down and learn to code, but I haven't really found a project that I'm passionate about, even if it's just coding, because I love the intricacies and challenges. I could do that. Yeah. I'm actually I know. I'm actually in the process of rebuilding it, but I'm using like a template thing. And I do know some basic HTML and a little bit of CSS, and I do mess around with a little bit there. And
that's how I got into it as well.
In the header, it's like, I know like where the header is and why it has to be in the header, and those types of things. So I'm learning a little bit. I've learned a little bit over the years.
That's it. That's literally the way I learned that.
Yeah, that is not. I would never feel comfortable building my own website, though. That would be, I think, too much of a daunting task, and I have too many other things. Like, then I wouldn't be able to do the podcast.
Depends how complicated your
Maybe
website
I should just. That's true. Yeah, it's pretty simple, but yeah, I want to rebuild it. It hasn't been touched in like 4 years, so it's time for a refresh. 8 years.
I can say the same of IndieShuffle. So,
it works, but that's about it.
If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
It's time for a refresh.
Somehow SubmitHub keeps breaking all the time, and I keep having to fix stuff. My grandmother keeps asking me. She's 93 now. She's like, "When is it done? Though, is it done? Aren't you done yet? You've been like." Surely you've done everything, right? What more is there to do? I'm like, well, Granny.
If only it was that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Grammy, right? Cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much. I have to get off and bounce into my other podcast episode here in a few minutes, but it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me back.
I always love chatting with you. You're such a delight, full of information. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You're too kind. I'm honored to be your first repeat offender. Yeah.
Yes, it's always a pleasure, and we'll have to catch up again in a year or two and see wwhere SubmitHub's
maybe
at.
Sooner. Well, we'll see if this marketplace idea takes off.
I'm actually might want to chat with you on that.
Yeah, it's so. One of the things we'll be offering is long format music journalism, and with no obligation to share it. It's just people actually just buying a long review from you. It doesn't necessarily go up on a blog. So
thank you so much, Jason, for being on the show. I'll keep you posted when this episode goes live, and we'll stay in touch, and hope to speak to you soon.
Cool. Good luck.